Hey guys, how are you doing today? Hope you have a good one. As you can see in the title, today we're doing the worst and best landing spots in Kings Canyon rank. Of course, we are looking all over the map because of the changes in the new season. I think it's worth examining the map with a fresh eye. So yeah, let's do that. Here's Kings Canyon, our oldest map in Apex Legends. It's what we started with in Season 1. This is the new area that was added in the north, the crash side. They've also reworked the swamps into Spotted Lake. What's a good spot to start the game? For me, a good landing spot has several qualities to it. First and foremost, it needs to have enough loot. It needs to have enough loot to support the entire team and not just for the Jumpmaster. Other than loot, you also need a few other things to call location good, I think. The second thing I look for in a good location is space. What do I mean by that? I mean that a good location has to have a lot of structures. It can be either like man-made structures or like terrain. Basically, it needs to have enough floors, enough nook and crannies, so that you are allowed to have more tactical options. For example, when you drop, if it's not contested at all, it doesn't matter all that much if you have space. But if it is contested and you have the space, you have the structures with multiple floors, you have the rocks, you have the nooks and crannies. This both allows you to be aggressive in an intelligent way by picking an unusual or surprising route to attack, or it allows you to run off in case you didn't get any loot. You should try to spend more time in areas with space and less time in areas which are like super open and they don't have any geography or structures on them. The third and final thing that I look for in a good landing spot is the connectivity to the rest of the map. I'll just turn on the jump towers. These are the current jump towers on the map. Basically, as you get closer to the middle of the map, the location has a better connectivity to the rest of the map. So one issue that Kings Canyon has is that at the center of the map there is very little loot. Another way to look at it is for connectivity. You have the jump towers. Basically with them you can sort of get around the map. So for me, a good location has good loot, a lot of space, and good connectivity to the rest of the map. For connectivity, it can either be through just being on a good location on the map, like near the center, or it can be through jump towers, or if you're on one of the other maps, like the other options that we have for transportation, like the gazers or the tridents. I think like right now, there are very few locations that are just awful. There are these locations, but they're few in general. In general, the worst areas on the map on which you can land are the unnamed areas. These areas are not good for a couple of reasons. The most important being that they don't have enough loot. Some of them do have space, but in general, they don't have enough loot for a whole team. They don't have enough loot for a trio. I don't even think they have enough loot for a duo most of the time. You might get lucky depending on the spawns. Some of the spawns for loot are very random. You might get some good weapons, but you're never gonna leave these areas after dropping with like filled out guns with attachments and armor, for sure. If you land in one of these areas and you get contested, you're fucked because you have to fight them with your fists, and they're fucked as well because they usually have to fight you with their fists as well. What you should do is, in general, try to avoid landing in these areas. Depending on the way that the dropship comes into the map, you can regulate how much action you're going to get by either jumping straight away if you want a very hard drop, and basically as you jump, the later you jump, the less action you'll see on the landing spot. For me, a good landing spot is a good landing spot regardless of the fact if it's contested or uncontested. A good landing spot has good fundamentals in terms of loot, space, and connectivity to the rest of the map. This means that if you want to land on a hot drop, you should pick a good location that's a hot drop depending on the dropship. If you want a colder drop, if you want to be safer, maybe you're playing solo queue, maybe you don't know the people you're playing with and you don't trust them, you can stay on the dropship later and pick a later landing spot, or you can look back and see which drop spots were left uncontested. I think it's better to land contested in a spot that has loot, space, and connectivity compared to one of those silly spots. I think if you ask most top players right now, they will tell you the best spot to land is probably crash site. Usually, the newer the spot is, especially on Kings Canyon, which has less loot than the other maps, the newer the location is, the more loot it has. And crash site offers all three things. It has great connectivity through a jump tower. It has great space. It's very vertical. It has a lot of rooms. It has a lot of nooks and crannies where you can hide in case you lose the fight and you don't want to leave the lobby. And it has a fuck ton of loot. It has so much loot. This location is like probably the most looted area in all of Kings Canyon. You always get a fight there. This is one downside. If you want to start slower, it's always contested. The worst spots are the unnamed spots on the map, and the best spot is crash site. Let's look at some of the other options where you can sort of get something in between. I think that some other great areas that also have a lot of loot, a lot of space, and a lot of connectivity are containment, water treatment, spotted lake. I also like the rig. If you're looking for a quieter drop, you can drop in the rig and broken relay. More often than not, you'll not get contested there. And there's also quite a bit of loot on the Mirage Voyage, but you basically need to jump in there fast. It's almost always going to be contested because it's a fresher area. Same goes for Gauntlet. It's almost always contested because people really enjoy jumping for the armor in the middle. And especially the people that play like a Pathfinder, an Octane, Mobility Legends really enjoy the open space there. Some areas that like they have the space, but they don't always have the loot are like Runoff. The pit is a bit on the edge. If you're doing duos, it's probably going to have enough loot. Bunker, like again, if you're doing duos, it might have enough loot. Airbase, like has some connectivity issues and some loot issues. There's probably enough loot for 3 people there, but it's very spread out, so it's gonna take a very long time for you to get it. The cage lacks a bit of space, like it has decent loot, but it lacks space. Labs and capacitor are also very popular, so jump there if you want to see action. So this is what I think about the Kings Canyon at the moment. Thanks everyone for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had a good time.